guys, Robout1 here, coming at you with a new Yu-Gi-Oh video talking about decks that you can play that aren't Sky Striker, Orcust, Thunder Dragon, or Salamangreat, because this format is boring and nothing's really changing. So I thought, why not make a video talking about other decks that you can play in this format that aren't those 4 decks that are just constantly being seen, no matter what. They're represented high in the top card, they're doing super good, they just don't seem to die no matter what, and I thought, why not make a video talking about other decks that you could potentially play in this format that are still really strong, that are decks that you can play, that are decks that are somewhat affordable depending on the build that you're playing, and just decks that are fun to play that aren't just the standard meta that we're currently in. Seeing as there is, in this current meta, a wide variety of decks that you can play that are just really fun and really cool in general to play. So, without further ado, I want to get into this video so I can tell you guys about these decks that I think you guys should try playing. All of these decks, in my personal opinion, have their own playstyles, they're all really fun, and they're all really interesting as well. So, let's get into this video so you guys can, you know, start testing out decks, seeing if you like them, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to press the like button. Also, check out the team, description below. We're going to mute my laptop real quick, though. But yeah, so without further ado, let's get into this. So the first deck we're going to be talking about on this list is Invokd. Now, Invokd has always not really been a deck of its own, it's always been an engine. But a specific build of this deck has always shown promise and has always been really good in the game. And that has been mekk-knight Invokd. And I kind of wanted to just say mekk-knight and Invokd in general, because this deck is actually a lot of fun to play. It's a pure going second deck, so you can play multiple different cards in this deck, be it Super Poly, be it Mind Control, be it pretty much any card that you want to still use during your opponent's turn to essentially have resources to stop your opponent from playing the game, to break their boards. But it's also a deck that can also just crash through boards really easily. Using the mekk-knights in general that just set up boards that, well, don't really set up boards, but utilize your opponent's boards to build up their own board, and then going into the Invokd area of the deck, where the deck literally just starts going into multiple different areas, where it goes into Mekka to have negate, Purgatorio to just attack for game. The deck has a lot of interesting features that I think is really cool, and it's also a really good going second deck that sure hasn't really been showing up much in the game, but still has a lot of potential, a lot of power, and is just really cool to talk about and think about, because basically Invokd can be mixed with any deck, really, when you think about it, because it's just an engine that utilizes a single attribute to be able to go even further, and I feel like mekk-knight Invokd are the best deck to play with this in. But if you're looking for a deck that just likes to go second, fusion summons, banishes cards from your opponent's graveyard to fusion summon, can play multiple hand traps, can just use mekk-knights to break boards, can play cards like Super Poly, Mind Control, with greatest of ease to go through opponent's boards, this is definitely a deck that I personally feel is really strong, and just a lot of fun to play in general. So that's the first one that I wanted to talk about, because it's a cool deck that I wanted to mention in this video. Next, though, another deck that you could be playing this format potentially, Dragon Link. With Chaos Impact, this deck got a lot of power, being that, well, Dragon Link was really strong even before Chaos Impact, being that you could just end on boards with like Appaloosa and Heretic Seal, and multiple different negates with their Guard Dragons and the Ib combo. But with Chaos Impact, this deck actually got Striker Dragon, a card that basically makes all the rocket cards that were in the deck no longer bricks, seeing as literally you just make this Striker Dragon. Striker Dragon adds the boot set to your hand, and you can then special summon every one of those rockets that were bricks in your hand. So the deck got more powerful. Plus, the deck is actually a lot of fun, being that, sure, it goes through a standard combo that ends on a negate board, but the deck can actually go through different routes to go through that combo. Like, you could start off with the Ib combo, obviously, which would just allow you to get to your spell card that will summon dragons from the grave, then you go into Lambda, but there's also areas where you could literally just change the build slightly and implement dangers, so you could do that. You could, for other cards, you could play the Dragon Levy in Air, you could play the new Star Leech card. Like, this deck actually has a lot of different builds that you could potentially play, and I feel like this, or hell, you could even just play pure rocket build, to facilitate striker dragons, so you're always guaranteed to have your full guard dragon link combo with pure rockets. Like, this is just one of those decks that it's got a very wide area to play around, where you do have to play certain key cards in the deck no matter what, such as the guard dragons, such as the what am I thinking of? Such as the Red MD, such as the Tempest, such as the Omni Dragon Brothor. But the deck can play a ton of different builds and a ton of different strategies, as I said, such as just a pure rocket build, a build that plays just a few rockets and other dragons with dangers. You could also play the Chaos build that plays the Levianaires, the Star Legions. Like, this deck has a lot of areas where you can play, and you can even implement Thunder Dragons in it if you want to play with Thunder Dragons. That's not the point of this video, but you can implement Thunder Dragons into a Dragon Link deck, which is something that's interesting as well. So Dragon Link is just a deck that's a lot of fun and has so many different builds and so many different ways to play that it's actually really, really cool that you have this ability to just constantly have different builds of a deck and just be really fun. And also, the deck is quite budget, being that you only really need to buy 3 structure decks to have the essential deck in general if you want to play a pure rocket build. And just like maybe not even a Saruja, just like a Saruja and maybe a Savage Dragon, and then a Striker Dragon. But then there's only a few cards outside of that to actually build it, and you could probably build this deck for roughly under £100, which is pretty good in my personal opinion. It's something that we've also been seeing from sealed only to videos, so something cool to talk about there. But that's Dragon Link. Let's go on to another deck that I personally feel like could be really cool to be playing this format, and that is Pure Lunalights. Now, Pure Lunalights has 2 versions currently. It has the Christia version that basically uses Into the Voids, all the Lunalights, dangers, everything along those lines, and it also has the pure build where it just literally goes second, fusion summons, and deals with your opponent. Now, this video is talking more about the version, the more competitive version, which is the Christia version, where you literally go through a ton of hoops using Lunalight Tiger multiple times to basically facilitate you just getting to the point where you can make a Christia, where you can have the end board with maybe some other disruptions, and just essentially go from there. Now, obviously, this is a more competitive build, and obviously this is the build that you would normally see more with like the Orcust. But I don't want to put the Orcust into this bit, because this deck is actually really good on its own. It's a deck that focuses primarily on going through all the Lunalight stuff, going through the Chick, going through the Tiger, going through multiple other different areas such as the Curious, Dangers as well, which are really cool, really good this format, and actually quite affordable now, seeing as they got reprints in the Megatins. This deck is actually really cool on its own, and I think that's a really good selling point for this deck, because sure, it's a deck that is better with Orcust. The Orcust cards do make this deck better, but it's a better standard. But I feel like it's a really good standalone deck as well. Being able to just go into like Curious, then make the new number card that was released in the Battles of Legend, that summons a monster from the graveyard, which would be Christia or a Fossil Dino or something along those lines, and just go even further from there. And it's just a really cool deck that I personally wanted to mention here, because it's just something that's fun, can play the competitive scene very easily, and is very competitive in general as well, because it's a fun competitive deck that you don't normally see, where it has a ton of different combos, a ton of different routes. The main starting of it is normally a Chick plus a Tiger, but it has multiple ways to get to that point, and I believe it's just a really cool deck in general because of that fact. So, Pure Lunalight, definitely a cool deck as well. Next, Gladiator Beasts. Yes, I put Gladiator Beasts on this list. Gladiator Beasts are just a really cool deck this format as well. They have multiple different ways to play the game. They can either go for a first turn negate board, they can go for a second turn just go into board, and they don't really get hurt by a lot of the meta of this format. Seeing as they don't really get hindered by there can only be one, a card that's very strong this format, and the deck can literally just attack with a non-winged beast, then tag out, go into the Bestiary, and then pop the leg can only be one. The deck has a multitude of new cards from Chaos Impact, being Test Panther, the new fusion that literally makes you choose the attack, that lets you choose what your opponent attacks, and has a negate, built-in negate. The card also has ways to special summon these out for free. It has a Monster Reborn that is actually really strong because the Monster Reborn summons from hand and graveyard, and it also prevents the monster from being destroyed by battle. So if you want to get the monster out, you can literally special summon a random Gladiator Beast, and then just attack with the Gladiator Beast, tag it out, and get rid of a problem on your opponent's board. It has a multitude of different ways to play the game. You can either go for the test target build with like the normal monsters and Rescue Rabbit. You could go for a purer build that doesn't really play Rescue Rabbit or Test Panther, and you focus more on just controlling the game in general, using stuff like Chariot, Gladiator Beast Chariot, and other cards like Counter Traps. And you can even play in this deck Deck Can Be Won as well to be able to just disrupt your opponent's boards. So just a really cool deck in general. It did top the Pro Play Tours in America, I believe, as well. So it does have potential in the format to a degree, which is one of the reasons why I put it on this list, because it's just a deck that has competitive potential and actually got a lot of new support, which made it a lot better. So something fun to play on this list, and it actually is really cool. Next, though, we have Cyber Dragons. Cyber Dragons are such a cool deck to play this format. Literally, it's always been a going second deck that has been really cool, but this deck can also go first. This deck has cards like Cyber Dragon Nashta that allows it to go first increasingly better, being that you can literally just Nashta, summon it, summon a Cyber Dragon from grave, go from there, make your Link monster, use cards like Galaxy Soldier to go into an Cyber Dragon Infinity, use Cyber Dragon Overload to destroy opponent's cards, use Emergency to search more Cyber Dragons, like, use Almirage and stuff to also send the Core to grave to make, Cyber Repair Plant live. Like, this deck has so much to this format that's actually really cool, and it's just something really fun. Also, it has stuff like Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. It has Chimera Tech Overload Dragon. Chimera Tech Overload Dragon. It has Chimera Tech in general, the one that just sucks up machines. So it's really good against Orcust, being that you summon a Cyber Dragon and then you just literally suck up the board. Your Link monster, your Dingirsu, and whatever else you have that's a machine is now in the graveyard, and I have up to a 4K beat stick. How do you feel? How do you feel, Duelist? And it's just really cool to have a deck like that that's able to OTK, to break through pretty much all boards when you really think about this format. Like, going up against like a deck like Orcust, this deck can easily beat it because it just breaks through the machines. Going up against a deck like Salamangreat, you just summon Cyber Dragon, suck up the Sunlight Wolf, and then turn off their trap cards and everything along those lines, so they can't really play the game. And against any real deck this format, this deck can compete very easily. Going first, going second, it's really strong. It can play cards like Mind Control to suck up your opponent's cards as well as the other going second decks can. It can play Super Polarization as well. Like, Cyber Dragon just has, it's got a ceiling to it, and I like that about the deck. And that's something really cool to look up when I'm looking at decks that you could potentially play this format. And Cyber Dragon is definitely a deck that you could potentially play this format and do quite well with. So, yeah, Cyber Dragon's pretty cool. Next is a personal favorite of mine, Pendulum. Now, obviously, Pendulum is a great deck that you could be playing this format, whereas Pendulum has always shown its head in the format. Sure, it hasn't been doing as well recently. It's had like one top. It had one top at YCS Pasadena, which was a 60 card variant that just played a ton of different Endymion cards, Magician cards, everything along the likes. But the deck is actually a really good deck as well. Even though it has that one top, there are multitudes of different builds that you could play. Like, you could play the Magician build, you could play the pure Endymion build, you could play an Endymion Magician hybrid, you could play an Odd Eyes build for all you want. Like, Pendulums have so many different variants this format that you could potentially play, and honestly, that's one of the reasons why it's on this list. Yes, it's a very competitive deck still. It's something that works really well. It's not in the top 4 or top 5 decks in my personal opinion, but it's a deck that actually has so many different variants, so much different play styles, that it's a deck that can do well at any event pretty much, and you have a great time with it. Because the different types of styles the deck has, because the different types of plays. Like, you could play a spell counter build, you could play a Magician build, you could play an Odd Eyes build, you could play an Electromite Turbo build. Like, there are just so many different varieties of Pendulums that you could potentially play this format, and that's something I really like. And almost every variety ends on a board of like 2 disruptions, 4 disruptions, 5, 6. That's literally the sky's the limit with pendulums. So that's just something I wanted. Like this is just a deck that I personally feel is really good this format, and it's something that I wanted to add on this list because it is a deck that you can play this format that isn't one of those 4 that I mentioned at the beginnings. I don't even want to really talk about those too much. But yeah, that's pendulums. I've said my piece about that. But next one, I have Gren Maju. Now, Gren Maju is actually a really solid choice this format. Now, honestly, Gren Maju is very akin to Caveman Yu-Gi-Oh! As they say, where back in the day, you literally just normal summoned attack and pass. But Gren Maju is one of those decks that literally just is like that. Like, the pure focus of the deck of Grand Maju in general is banish a ton of cards, normal summon Grand Maju, and attack for game. And the deck does it through multiple means. It uses Pot of Desires to banish 10, basically getting out to 4k attack as soon as you normal summon it. It uses cards like Gizmek Orochi to banish 8 more to place a body on the board. It uses the Dangers to thin out the deck to get to the Grand Maju, to get to Gizmex, to get to Pot of Desires. It uses multiple draw cards such as Allure of Darkness. It can utilize hand traps such as Phantasme, Impermanence, Ash Blossom. It can utilize going second cards as well because the deck does primarily want to go second in that fact. So you can use cards like Super Polymerization, Mind Mind Control, and the deck literally is just a really fun deck. Like, honestly, I've been testing this deck on the side, thinking, oh, this is a deck that I'm considering playing. It's something that I might play. Not too sure if I will play it, but it's something I might. And honestly, every time I've played it, I've had fun with it. Purely because it's literally, oh, I'm going to draw a card, I'm going to use Danger, I'm going to draw more cards, get to banish cards, then summon my Gren Maju, look my opponent in the face and be like, I have a very big monster that I'm going to hit you with. Ha! And that's the fun part about it. It's like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has always been a deck where making a really big monster feels enjoyable. And Gren Maju is that monster. Gren Maju is one of those monsters that you just look at, feel like, oh, this thing can be really big. Let's try and incorporate this into a deck. Like, this is the kind of card that I look at and I feel like a child again. I feel like this is the deck that will make you feel like a child again, and it's just something really, really fun to look up because of that. So, Gren Maju is definitely a deck that I am considering playing this format. It's something that I've got to get a few more cards for, I admit, but it's just something really fun that I wanted to mention in this video as well. So, Caveman Yu-Gi-Oh! Is sometimes fun Yu-Gi-Oh! Not gonna lie. But then the next deck we're going to be talking, the next deck is Guru. Guru is another deck that is actually quite cheap now, when you really think about it. Like, I think the only real expensive card in the deck is, what is it? It's a Pot of Extravagance for the fact that it's only got 1 print, it's a secret rare, and it says draw 2. And literally, that's the only real expensive card I think that's in the deck that you really need. Because the deck is obviously a deck that can go first or second. It's a deck that utilizes cards like There Can Only Be One, Super Polymerization, Impermanence, tons of hand traps, Guru in general. And it's a deck that has its own playstyle that we don't really see in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anymore. Seeing as this is a flip deck. Now, we haven't had a proper flip deck in years, in my personal opinion. Well, a good one. Crawlers were a flip deck. They had cool side things that could be done in casual play, but they weren't good. They weren't competitive. They weren't super meta. Shadows you could also count as that, but honestly, would you say Shadow was a flip deck? That deck was a combo deck in general. It didn't set and pass. It literally just shadowed. But the deck in general, Guru in general, it's a very stall control deck that personally I'm not a fan of because it's a deck that plays There Can Only Be One. I hate There Can Only Be One and I want to stab it in its eye. But Guru in general is still a interesting deck to play. Now, obviously, it's a deck that primarily does activate Hidden City, set for pass with a Guru on board, and a Fiendess in hand. And that is obviously not the most enjoyable thing. But this is also one of the more competitive decks that you could be playing as well. Whereas if you're that type of player who likes to play a stun deck that looks likes to prevent your opponent from playing the game, that likes to have a slower play style that also prevents the opponent from playing the game with cards like There Can Only Be One, Super Polymerization, Solemn Judgment, Solemn cards. This is the type of deck that I feel like you should be playing, purely because it's a cool deck that utilizes trap cards. It has flip monsters. It has very consistent boards. Sure, the most expensive card is Pot of Extravagance, like I said before, but hell, if you want to play this deck, it's something that's there. It's something that will definitely win you games and can be competitive. Like you could easily win top a regional with this, I would say, just because it's a deck that utilizes floodgates to the massive degree and can also just beat through your opponent's cards with like Subterra Final Battle, because you flip it, you reset it, and double your Subterra's attack, or gives it attack to its defense, something like that. But yeah, just something really cool that I thought I'd put on this list as well, because it's just one of those decks that you don't normally see on these lists, because it's not the best deck, but it's a deck that isn't the most enjoyable as well. I admit it's a cool deck, but it's not always going to be the most enjoyable. But yeah, for the next one. So the next one is Heroes. Now, obviously, Heroes is a deck that's near and dear to my heart. It's the name of it's on my channel. It's now part of my channel in general, because I've changed the name to Absolute Duelist. Video coming up about that. And literally, it's a deck that I personally say it's a cool deck to play. It's a lot of fun. It has a lot of combos and a lot of strategies that not a lot of people see, and it's a very fan favorite deck. Now, this deck is always going to be good because of one reason: Dark Lore. And that's one of the reasons why it's on this list. This deck is good against multitudes of decks in this format. It's good pretty much against all of the big ones. Thunder Dragon, it's good against Thunder Dragon because like majority of it is the Chaos build now, and they ain't got a graveyard, they can't play the game. It's good against Salamangreat, it's good against Orcust, and it's good against Sky Striker because it literally just banishes all the resources that they have anyway. The deck can also play other cards such as Destiny Hero Plasma to just have a skill drain on board along with the Dark Lore. And the deck is just a very heavy combo deck, where if you're looking for a combo deck that just utilizes normal, special, Link, Fusion, this is a deck for you, purely because it's a deck that, one, it locks itself into itself. So if you like pure archetypes, this is a pure archetype deck. So this will be something that you guys should consider playing, just because it's a deck that will lock it into itself. But outside of that, the deck is really cool. It has so many different plays, as I said. Dark Lore is its primary one. Plasma is another one. You can utilize Destiny Heroes. You can utilize Vision Heroes. Obviously, like the Vision Heroes are the primary focus right now, purely because it enables the whole combos in the deck to end on turn 1 Dark Lores and Plasmas. You can utilize the new evil hero cards as well, being Captain Gold and Malicious Bane, so you can just have a free Raigeki on your opponent's turn. Plus, the deck is great going first or second, just because Plasma and Dark Lore is dumb, and also you can just OTK very easily in this deck. So it's a cool deck, it's very fun, very enjoyable to play, and obviously I've talked about this a bit longer than the others, but it's definitely a cool deck that you could play, guys, and I definitely feel like you guys should consider playing it and trying it out, personally, because it's just a very cool competitive deck in general. But the last deck I wanted to talk about on this list is a deck that I've played personally. It's something that I've done well with in the past, and that is Orcust. Now, Orcust is another deck that is really good, really fun. Like, honestly, this is one of the more enjoyable trap decks, because this is a deck that has multiple different interactions and multiple different ways to play itself. Now, obviously, the main focus is the Multi-Faker. The Multi-Faker is the card that will allow you to play the game the most, being that it will summon itself from the hand during your opponent's turn, and depending on what you summon depends on what you do. Now, there are multiple different times things you can summon from this, but normally it'll be a Siliquise to compulse your opponent's monster. That's the main thing. You're always going to have a compulse on your opponent's turn, and it facilitates this by utilizing trap cards. And that's the main focus of the deck, obviously. It's traps, Multi-Faker, Siliquise, and stop your opponent from playing the game. But the cool thing about Orcust is that it doesn't do this with floodgates. It doesn't do this with tons of hand traps. Like, Orcust is the one trap deck currently in the game that utilizes other kinds of traps. Its main utilization is normal trap cards and counter trap cards, using Solemns to basically prevent your opponent from using cards to stop you, using cards like Compulse and Crackdown to be able to still get rid of opponent's problem cards and just also steal cards in general, uses cards like Lost Wind to negate stuff, uses Impermanence to trigger the Multi-Faker during their turn if they go first, and also to just negate their cards in general. This is one of the more unique trap decks in the game right now because it's a deck that literally focuses more towards normal traps and continuous traps, as counter traps, than as floodgates. Because literally the game is so floodgate oriented with trap decks, and this is the only one that doesn't do that. So that's just my thoughts on Orcust in general. Plus the deck can have amazing boards sometimes. Like you can literally end on boards with like double hex steer at times. You can end on boards with like multi-faker 4 traps that are just like 2 solemns or a compulse with an Orcust card. You can end on a link, like the turn 1 boards are not the most amazing because they literally just set a few cards past with a faker in hand, but in the late game, this deck goes very far. Plus, the more you play with this deck, the more skillful it becomes, seeing as it's just something that it takes a lot of skill and a lot of patience to actually learn fully. So, that's the last one that I wanted to talk about. Orcust, it's a cool deck. Definitely consider playing it. It's one of the more interesting trap decks out there. So, guys, those are 10 decks that you could potentially think of playing this format. I know this video was quite long. I wanted to talk about as much as possible because this is a video that I wanted to do, and it's something that I thought would be really cool to talk about. 10 other decks that aren't the best in the deck meta, but can definitely do stuff in this meta in general. So if you think you like any of these decks, guys, tell me in the comment section below. Tell me what your thoughts are on them. Tell me if you would play them yourselves. Tell me anything along those lines. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to press the like button and show your support. If you want to see more future good content, press the subscribe button. To Absolute Duelist, the new channel name. I'm still RobAbout1, but I felt like a new image going in, seeing as we're getting closer and closer to the end of the year. And check out the team page in the description below as well. But guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been RobAbout1. These are decks that you can play that aren't the boring Orcust, Salamangreat, Sky Striker, and Thunder Dragons. And I will see you next time. RobAbout1, signing out. Later.